When Nathan entered the house that evening, I knew something was off. It wasn't the usual late-night shuffle. The weary sigh, the loosened tie, the jingle of keys hitting the counter, followed by murmured complaints about another grueling shift at the station. No, this was different. His movements were too precise, too controlled, as if he were holding something back. A chill crept up my spine. His face was unreadable, devoid of any emotion, but his eyes were cold, unfamiliar, almost hollow. I opened my mouth to ask what was wrong, but the words caught in my throat. A deeper instinct, primal and urgent, whispered that I might not want to know. Nathan had been different for days. Distant, restless, his temper quick to spark. At first, I blamed stress. Broadcasting is a relentless industry, and for over 2 decades, he had navigated last-minute technical disasters with the practiced calm of a veteran. But this wasn't about work. He didn't even look at me when I brought up politics or the FCC. Instead, he went straight to the guest bedroom, and when I heard the door click shut, I gasped. Something was undoubtedly wrong. I remained motionless at the dining table, my unfinished tea growing cold in my hands. The house was too quiet. I tried to focus on the other room, listening to the creak of floorboards as he moved around. I had been reading earlier, but now I just skimmed the pages without processing a single word. And then I heard it, a deep, trembling sigh, the kind a man makes when his patience has run out. I turned towards the hallway, waiting, anticipating his return. My pulse quickened. Had I done something wrong? I swallowed hard. Nathan wasn't a violent man, but even the kindest people can become treacherous. I paced the kitchen, my thoughts spiraling. Had I made a mistake? Had I left something out of place? A message on my phone. Did someone see something and tell him? I reached for my phone on the counter, hesitating. Would calling Greg be too obvious? If Nathan was truly suspicious, any wrong move could confirm his doubts. I forced myself to breathe. Maybe I was just overreacting. Maybe I was just tired, but deep down I knew better. I walked to the guest bedroom, hand hovering over the door, KN, pressing my ear to the wood. Silence. Somehow that was worse. Nathan never slept in the spare room. Even after our worst arguments, he had always stayed in our bed. So why now? My fist clenched. If he knew something, why didn't he confront me? Did he think I would just sit here waiting for the axe to fall? Frustration churned inside me. I spun around, headed back to the kitchen, and grabbed a wine glass. I wasn't getting through this sober. The first sip burned, but it didn't ease my nerves. I pulled out my phone again, scrolling through my texts. Nothing from Greg. The clock read 11:42 p.m. Nathan was still awake. I tapped my fingernails against the counter, debating, should I act like nothing was happening, go to bed, or should I knock on that door and demand answers? The thought made my stomach churn. Instead, I opened a blank message. Hey, everything is fine. My thumb hovered over the send button. Then I deleted it. Greg would ask why I was nervous. I couldn't afford to show fear. I tightened my grip around my wine glass. If Nathan was playing a game, I needed to be careful. The walls were closing in, and that terrified me. Suddenly, my phone vibrated. I nearly dropped my drink. Greg, everything okay? I exhaled slowly. He was checking in. Yes, just tired. I'll see you Monday. I stared at the screen, willing myself to believe it. Monday was supposed to be an escape, a night where I could forget reality. But as I downed the last of my wine, I realized Monday wasn't an escape. It was a reckoning. I set the glass down harder than necessary. Nathan knew, and I wasn't ready for everything to fall apart. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand and forced myself to stand. Tomorrow I would act normal. I would kiss Nathan good morning, hand him his coffee, and pretend everything was fine, because sometimes the best defense is a well-placed lie explanations just in case Nate inquired about my reason for leaving, but he didn't. His eyes were fixed on the Monday Night Football game as he sat on the couch, a beer in his hand. Like any other night, the broadcast was free of tension, rage, and distrust. I hovered in the doorway, afraid of nothing, or at least nothing I could see, with my keys in my palm and my purse slung over my shoulder. I gently cleared my throat. Nathan, he hardly looked at me before nodding, and I forced my heart to keep from pounding against my ribs. I figured I'd go keep Jenna company since she's having a bad night, even though it wasn't my best excuse. It was simple enough. Tell her I said hello, he muttered, his attention still on the screen. I waited for him to stop me. He didn't. I left the motel I drove to after he knew, but he didn't ask Greg, and I met at the Laurelin, a little out of the way motel. We needed to be discreet. My hands gripped the steering wheel too tightly, my knuckles turning white, my stomach twisting into knots. When I pulled into Greg's parking lot, something felt wrong. He was already there. I took a deep breath to calm myself before getting out, hurrying to the room we always used. I knocked once. Greg's face softened when he saw me. Hey, beautiful, he murmured, beckoning me inside. I attempted a smile, but even as he wrapped his arms around me, I couldn't shake the sensation that I was being watched. Greg pulled back, studying me. What's wrong? Nathan's been acting strange lately, I admitted. Greg sneered. You're just being paranoid. I wanted to believe him, but the constant unease wouldn't leave me. Greg smiled, that smile that used to make me weak in the knees. He tilted my ch up. Forget about him for a little while. I nodded, pushing my concerns aside as he led me to the bed. Then the screen flickered. At first, I thought it was a power surge, but then I saw us, the bed, the hotel room, Greg's arms around me projected onto the screen. I stumbled back, gasping. My stomach plummeted. Greg froze. I swung my gaze around, wide-eyed. This couldn't be real, but my heart was pounding so loudly in my ears. We were live for everyone to see. Oh my God, Nathan had set me up. A strangled sound slipped out of me, part SB, part gasp. My hand shook as I fumbled for my purse. My phone, I dialed Nathan. It rang, and then he answered, having fun with the game. His voice was calm, too calm. My jaw dropped. Nathan, my voice barely came out as a whisper. He laughed. Oh, I didn't do anything. CLA, his voice was smooth, casual. But you plan this? My throat was closing, my lungs gasping for air. Everybody saw it. Greg cursed under his breath, running a hand through his hair. I ignored him. My focus was on Nathan, I whispered, please don't do this. His voice turned cold. You made your choices, now live with them. The line went dead. I didn't even realize I was crying until I tasted salt on my lips. Greg turned off the television, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. The church, the station, our friends, my daughters, everyone had seen it. I collapsed into a chair, my legs too weak to hold me up. Greg ran a hand down his face. We have to fix this, I muttered, panicked, but there was nothing to fix. After a year of believing I was in control, Nathan had destroyed me in a single night. My marriage broken, my reputation shattered, and the worst part, Nathan hadn't even raised his voice. He hadn't screamed. He hadn't demanded revenge. He had simply let me go. And that somehow was worse. Greg reached for me. CLA, listen. I pulled away, stumbling to my feet, gasping for breath. I had to go home. I had to face what was left. I don't remember the drive. I don't remember Greg calling my name. I only remember the panic, the white-hot terror that filled every part of me. Nathan had set me up, and I had walked straight into it. The whole city had seen. I pulled into the driveway, barely aware of my own shaking hands, my ragged breaths. The house was dark except for a faint glow from inside. Nathan was waiting. I forced myself forward, my heels clicking on the pavement. At the door, I hesitated, then I pushed it open. Nathan sat on the couch, whiskey in hand, legs crossed, but he wasn't angry. He wasn't smug. He was bored, like I wasn't even worth his rage. That hurt more than if he had screamed at me. My purse slipped from my fingers, crashing to the floor. Nathan raised a hand. I froze. He took a slow sip of his drink before meeting my eyes. You don't get to come in here and cry like you're the victim, Claire. I swallowed hard. His voice was calm too. Come, I can explain, I whispered. Nathan laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Explain. He leaned forward, setting his glass down with a clink. The whole damn city saw it, Claire. My gut twisted. Nathan shook his head, breathing through his nose. Please, I begged, just talk to me. I talked to you for years, he said, his voice low. I asked if you were happy. I asked if you still loved me. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Nathan's jaw tensed. You lied, he said, over and over. I sank lower. You humiliated me. His voice was tight, made me look like a fool. The house phone rang. Nathan didn't even glance at it. My cell buzzed. I hesitated, then reached for it. Mom, she knew. They all knew. Nathan watched me, his expression unreadable. You did this, he said simply. Tears pricked my eyes. Please, I whispered. Fix this, he scoffed. You want me to fix this? He exhaled sharply. I already did. He reached into his bag, tossed a folder onto the table. I stared, my stomach twisted. Divorce papers. My breath froze. Nathan's voice was quiet. I made these last week. I shook my head. Please, I rasped. He gave a hollow laugh. You didn't just make a mistake, CLA. His eyes darkened. You made a choice. Nathan exhaled slowly. I won't yell at you. His voice was steady. I won't beg you for answers. His keys jingled as he grabbed them. You have until 5 o'clock to sign. Nathan, please. There's nothing left to say. He walked out the door. I collapsed into the chair. Trembling, I reached for the papers. This couldn't be real, but it was, and it was all my fault.